Hey everyone, welcome to Mull to 5. I'm JD, and as usual, I'm here playing the jankiest Tier 3 Spicy Rogue Brews for your viewing pleasure. First things first, if you enjoy what we do here, please take a moment to like and subscribe. It's a quick and easy way to show your support, help out the channel. We really appreciate it. Also, I'd like to thank our sponsor, Main Phase Media. These videos would not be possible without them, so please check them out for all your graphic design and video production needs. And finally, if you have your own janky masterpiece you'd like to see me play, you can leave a comment or feel free to shoot an email to the address in the description below. And with that, we will get straight to the deck tech. And today is a deck that I think was originally created by Travis Wu. It's a T Wu brew, so I'm calling it T Wu Blue. It is a mono blue devotion deck. So this one's actually pretty cool. We'll start with the mana base. So in any devotion deck, Nykthos is your go-to guy. Legendary land, choose a color, add an amount of mana of that color equal to your devotion to that color. So Nykthos has the potential to generate a ton of mana. We've got Minamo, which can untap a legendary permanent, that legendary permanent being Nykthos. So Minamo is in there to kind of help us utilize Nykthos twice if we have a turn where we really want to go crazy. Then there's 12 basic islands. So in terms of lands, we're looking at, 16? There's only 16 actual lands. The rest of our mana base, so to speak, is composed of border posts. The two blue ones, or the two ones that include blue, the Field Mist and Mistvein. And so what these are doing is they tap for mana, but they also add devotion at the same time. They have a blue mana symbol, and they also tap for blue. So these are kind of pulling double duty. If you have a Nykthos on the field, their devotion gets counted towards Nykthos, and they can also tap for mana themselves. So they're really, with a Nykthos out, basically tapping for 2 mana, which is pretty powerful. The only thing is, in order to, you could cast them for 3 mana if somehow we had access to white. Like if we already have a Field Mist, we could cast another using the white mana and hard cast it, but generally that is not what we're doing. We're going to use its alternate casting cost, which says you may pay 1 and return a basic land you control to its owner's hand rather than pay the spell's mana cost. So that's how we're getting these things out. We're going to pay 1 and bounce a basic back to our hand to play these. So that means in order to play these, we need to have a basic in hand. So there's going to be some awkward mulligans, where maybe we'll just have a Nykthos or a Minamo and a bunch of these in our hand, and we literally can't get them out because we need the islands. So unfortunately, we might have to mulligan a couple times until we find the right combination. There's only 12 basic islands, so sometimes we're going to miss, but hopefully we will find it enough where we can cast these guys. They do enter the battlefield tapped, so they're a little bit slow, but they add devotion. So the idea is we get a slow start, but then we really start, cranking and going wild once we have some devotion and we can start adding a ton of mana. So I'll kind of run through piece by piece the rest of the deck. So in the early turns, our 1-drops are Seize Claim and Serum Visions. Serum Visions, just a great magic card. It's like the best cantrip we have in Modern. Draws a card, scry 2, so we get to look at 3 cards off the top of our deck. Can kind of fix our draws, get rid of extra Nykthos that we don't need, or hopefully dig into answers that we do need, etc. So Serum Visions is a great turn 1 play if we're not dropping a border post, turn 2 play, whatever. Seize Claim is another good one. Now, since we're a devotion deck, we want lots of permanents. And so Seize Claim is a great one. It enchants a land. We're going to be enchanting our opponent's lands, and it becomes an island. Straight up, just becomes an island. Loses all the rest of its abilities. It is now an island. So obviously, if we're up against another blue deck, this is less useful. But if we're up against like Jund, who doesn't play any blue at all, and they need a lot of dual lands, or if we're up against like Tron, for example, this Rex Tron, if we can basically make their lands semi-useless, we can really set them back. So this can be a great tempo play. And it adds devotion. So Seize Claim is perfect. Uh-oh. My screen appears to be stuck. There we go. I don't know what's happening here. Okay, we're back. Moving on to the 2-drop slot. We have a few of them. First is Cyclonic Rift. It's a great bounce spell. And it can bounce anything. Unlike, like, we could run Vapor Snag or something, but that only hits creatures. And this returns any non-land permanent to its owner's hand. And the great thing about this is it plays nicely with another 2-drop we have called Declaration of Naught. So Declaration of Naught is an enchantment. Again, it's adding double devotion, 2 blue symbols in its mana cost. So this adds 2 devotion. And when it enters the battlefield, you choose a card name, and then as long as this is on the battlefield, you can just pay 1 blue to counter that whatever chosen spell. So a great play, a great little synergy actually between Cyclonic Rift and Remand is you either bounce something back to their hand with Cyclonic Rift for 2 mana, or you counter it back to their hand with Remand. And then once you have, on the next turn, when you have 3 mana available, you name that card you just bounced because you know it's in their hand now. And then you have the 3rd mana up to counter it. So a great play is turn 2 bounce, turn 3 name whatever you bounced, and now they can't replay it. You could name stuff blindly with Declaration. That works too. But generally, it's best if you know what's in their hand. So Cyclonic Rift, Remand works super well with Declaration. The last 2-drop is Spreading Seas, very similar to Seize Claim. Adds the same amount of devotion, costs 1 colorless more, but we draw a card. It replaces itself. So Spreading Seas is great. And with 8 of these land disruption main board, we do have a pretty good game against Tron. We can disrupt people pretty well. Like I said, against blue-based decks, not so great, but it does still add to our devotion, so it's not completely useless. We talked about the border posts, Master of Waves in a mono-blue devotion deck. This is kind of our biggest win con. The idea is we have a ton of devotion. We slam a Master of Waves. He creates 1 million elemental tokens, and then we protect him with our counterspells and go to town and win that way. So he's our big win con. Leyline of Anticipation's amazing in our deck. We're hoping we start the game with it on the battlefield. That's the ideal situation. We can hardcast it for 4 when we need to because the flash effect is really, really great. It turns Declaration. You don't have to guess blindly with Declaration of Naught. If you can now cast this at instant speed, as long as you have 3 mana available, this becomes a straight up hard counter with Leyline out. Because we can now cast this with Flash. So they try to cast their whatever. Who cares? Eidolon of the Rhetoric. If we have 3 mana up, we flash this in, name Eidolon, and then activate it and counter it. So with Leyline out, we can do some crazy things, especially with Declaration. We get to play everything at instant speed. I think that's probably the biggest trick, the best thing we can do. But being able to play literally everything at instant speed is a big benefit because we also play with counter spells. We play with, other instants. So if we can go to our opponent's turn and see what they do, then we can make the decision of, do we want to counter or bounce, whatever they're trying to do, or is the coast clear to advance our board and maybe slam a Master of Waves or whatever. So Leyline is a great one in our deck, especially if we start the game with it. That's 2 blue devotion on turn 0, so things can get really silly. If you have a Nykthos, it adds up quick. Adding to our counterspell suite, along with Remand and the Declaration, is Cryptic Command. Because we're in mono blue, Should be pretty easy to cast this once we have 4 mana. The triple blue is not a restriction, and it's just such a good, versatile card. Crypto Command is amazing. Doesn't really need much of an explanation. And then kind of topping this off is a couple cards. Travis Wu's deck, I think it used like Omniscience and Myojin of the Seeing Winds, which are both 10 drops. And of course, yes, if you have Nykthos out and you can generate 10 mana, you slam a Myojin, draw a ton of cards, find your Omniscience, drop Omniscience, whatever. You know, you're doing crazy, crazy things, but that does require a ton of mana. It does require a Nykthos. So I went a little more reserved, I would say. Less hoping for the crazy mana Nykthos draw, and playing a couple cards that, if the game, we could, cast normally. A 5-drop and a 6-drop isn't unreasonable in a semi-controlling deck. And, even if we only have Nykthos with a few devotion out, they're castable. We don't need like maximum devotion to cast these guys. So anyway, the 2 cards I'm using are Tezzeret Artifice Master. He does add 2 devotion on his own. He's a 5-drop. His +1 creates a colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying, so he protects himself pretty well. He generates a flying blocker, which is pretty relevant with spirits and Phoenix and everything running around. His 0 draws a card. However, if you control 3 or more artifacts, you draw 2 cards instead. So I figured he was a pretty interesting fit. Since we're running the border posts anyway, we're likely to have a couple of these out. And so then if he makes just 1 Thopter, or maybe we even have 3 of these out already. But he doesn't have to, we already have some artifacts built into the deck, so his 0 ability can potentially be drawing us 2 cards a turn, which is pretty amazing. The extra card draw in this deck is super helpful. And if we ever ultimate him, we've probably won the game at that point if we get his ultimate off. You get an emblem at the beginning of your end step. Search your library for a permanent card, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. So, like I said, being a devotion deck, we do have some pretty solid permanents we could search up. We could find our Master of Waves to go for the kill. We could find a Declaration of Naught to make sure we're countering any threats that we're really worried about. We could find a Spreading Seas if we're up against Tron and we really gotta blow up their land. We could find the last card, Consecrated Sphinx. This is a 6-drop. It's a 4/6 flyer. Whenever an opponent draws a card, you draw 2 cards. So this is just insane card advantage, and it's a great beater too. A 4/6 flyer, if we can protect it, is a pretty fast clock. And so yeah, that's the deck. Like I said, a little toned down, maybe a little more consistent from Travis's original brew, but I really, really liked the idea. It seems like it's going to be a lot of fun. We'll talk about the sideboard really quick. So, along the kind of devotion theme, our creature, the way we take care of a lot of creatures is with Threads of Disloyalty. It's an enchantment. It has 2 blue in its casting cost, so it's 2 blue devotion. And we control enchanted creature with converted mana cost 2 or less. So this will steal Tarmogoyf. This will steal Thing in the Ice, even flipped. This will steal a lot of big threats. So Thing in the Ice, Threads of Disloyalty is great in our deck if we're up against, a deck running some smaller value creatures. They lose their creature, we gain a creature. So it's pretty amazing, adds to our devotion. And then some other kind of standard blue inclusions. Hurkyl's Recall for artifact decks, Dismember as additional removal, and we could even pay the black sometimes with the, Mistvein? Whichever one the black one is. Yeah, Mistvein. If we have a Mistvein out, we don't necessarily have to take all 4 life to pay for this. Maybe we can pay for both black or even just pay 1. So Dismember is great, takes care of other creatures we can't handle with Threads. This will take care of a Gurmag Angler. This will take care of Crackling Drake. This will take care of so many things. So Dismember kind of fleshes out the creature suite, because in a blue deck, we don't really have access to hard removal. That's something we struggle with. So I wanted to hedge our bets against creatures. We have pretty good game against Tron already with the Spreading Seas and Seas Claim, so I'm not worried about that. Relic of Progenitus for graveyard-based decks, and then Dispel. If we're up against a removal-heavy deck, especially in black or white, Dispel's great to protect our threats, namely Master of Waves. He has protection from red, so I'm not worried about Lightning Bolt, etc., but a Path or Fatal Push or whatever takes care of him pretty handily, so we want to be protecting him with Dispel. This also, works against, we could bring this in against Burn or Storm or whatever. The Phoenix decks as an alternative to maybe Cryptic or the Remans. It's just a cheaper, more relevant counterspell. But anyway, I think that does it. So yeah, super excited for this one. Mono Blue Devotion in Modern. We're going to take it to a friendly Modern League and see how we do. I will see you guys in the first match. Thank you so much for watching.